Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an upload that really is, it's pretty twisted, and it really made me think because of a lot of things that I've covered in the past. And the person that I spoke with actually last night kind of made me question some things that I have learned and thought about. So before we get into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Brief things before we jump into this very mind opening, or thought provoking would be the best word, upload. I'm a little off my game. I spent the majority of my day yesterday, which would be Wednesday. I'm recording it Wednesday evening, with family. I come from a small upstate New York community, and in the Adirondacks. I was a only kid, and both my parents worked, and I spent a lot of time with my godmother and extended family, and my godmother passed away, so I'm a little off my game. I almost didn't record. I almost didn't call this person just because, and then I figured, hey, get out of your head and think about something different. So that's what I'm doing. So if I'm off my game, that's why. Second, subscribers send me things all the time, and I love it. I really do love getting gifts from you guys. I remember one of the first things I ever got was from the person that sent me a gift yesterday. His name's John Sumner. And John has a very, very interesting sense of humor. And he's in the live stream, every live stream. He watches every video. He's just a really cool guy. Now, one of the first things that he sent me was, and it didn't cost any money, but I still have it to this day because it means something to me. Was this: warning, Bigfoot sighted. Bigfoot Fun Park in Branson, Missouri. And it's just the pamphlet of this Bigfoot Fun Park, but it was one of the first things a subscriber had ever sent me, and I've saved it to this day. It's actually on a cork board hanging up in my downstairs studio. So when I got my mail today, or yesterday, I had a package from John Sumner, and I opened it, and it was a new coffee mug. And during the live streams, we have a lot of fun. We share experiences and theories and other things, but it is unlike any other live stream in this field of cryptozoology, paranormal research, because I have quite the unique humor as well. But he sent me a coffee mug, and if you can't read it, it just says, Bigfoot grabbed my wiener, and he's holding up a hot dog. But it's just funny. You'd have to be at the live stream to understand my sense of humor. It's just really cool. John, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. With that, let's jump into this upload. All right, so I received an email a couple months ago from a woman who is a subscriber but was not until she listened to my channel. She's good friends with a subscriber of this channel, and she sent her the upload to the San Bernardino homeless being attacked. And the woman that I spoke to, her name's Wendy, and she works with an organization designed to help the homeless. And she is stationed out of Seattle, Washington. Actually, she helps the homeless that are about 30 minutes outside of Seattle, Washington. Apparently, there's a homeless encampment deep into the woods. And I ended up talking to her last night. So her friend sends her the video, and she was pretty blown away because after dealing with the homeless, she started to ask questions. And there was a woman who she had befriended, a homeless woman who only became homeless. She's in her 60s and only became homeless after her husband passed away. And their medical bills had wiped them out to the point where she had to sell her home and everything else. So she ended up, she's living out of a caravan and a tent. In cold nights, she sleeps in her van. She's on disability, and her disability she doesn't make even enough to sustain, because she's literally still like in debt up to her eyeballs. And I feel terrible for her. But she is in this community, this homeless community that is 30 minutes outside of Seattle, Washington, in an area called Kent. And prior to 2024 summer of, she had parked her van on a road called Green River Road. And I guess how Wendy explained it to me, there was RVs parked along this road, and there were actually tiers of people living. There was road level, then a level up. And in the summer of 2024, the local government kind of put a crackdown to it. And it wasn't just because they were sick of dealing with the homeless population being there. It was actually because of the criminal element that had been attracted to that area. There were people stealing cars and RVs and selling drugs and human trafficking and all of this crazy shit in the midst of a homeless encampment, because the criminal element said, who's going to look here? So they took advantage of that. 2024 summer of, government comes in, local government kicks everyone out. And what the population did was they just went deep into the woods. And I'm assuming some of the criminal element may have went with them, but if you are of that element, you're not going to live in the woods. You're going to go elsewhere and seek other places to take advantage of. So with this very large homeless population. We're talking hundreds, up to possibly 1,000 people homeless in these encampments, living very deep in the mountains and woods of Kent. And you can Google this. Like, it's literally a huge homeless encampment out there. So this Wendy woman ends up talking to Sandy after she hears this upload, and she says, I got to ask you a couple questions. And she says, besides humans, besides the criminal element and other homeless people that may be mentally unsound, have you been afraid or seen something that really scared you while you were homeless, while you were camped out into the woods? Because they literally would take, they would figure out a way of pulling their vehicles deep into the woods, old roads and such, and just really an ingenious way of living. If you really think about it, it's a terrible way to live, and I feel terrible for these poor people, but you do what you need to do to live. And so there are these like shoddy roads, and she had pulled her van out there because she's not going to live in a tent when she's got a vehicle to sleep in, but she's also not going to leave the safety of the friends that she met in this community. They became a small community, and there's different communities within this huge population of homeless. This is all per Wendy. So this Sandy woman says, what do you mean? And Wendy plays her the San Bernardino video where I interview a subscriber from San Bernardino. And during the upload, her eyes just got 10 times larger than what they were. And she says to Wendy, I know exactly what this guy is talking about. We've seen them up here. And she said the police know about these things. She said, I wouldn't doubt if what he's saying, that the government uses these things to prey on us and to get rid of us, I wouldn't doubt that true. She said because from the time that she's been homeless, which would be 2022, up until present day, that she's aware of there's at least, maybe more, 5 deaths reported as ODs, if they were reported at all. But these were Dogman attacks. She doesn't know if the government let these creatures attack the homeless or if they just didn't care. And one of the times that the police actually did respond to a attack that they labeled as a OD, there were a group of police officers, and there was a strange looking tall man, a singular man with the police officers in a suit. His skin was very pale. He didn't wear a cap or anything or a hat. He had, combed hair, and he wore sunglasses, but he was very tall and very pale, which is common in Seattle, she said. It is common, but there's just something off about him. And her exact words were, he was a strange looking bird. So that day, she had witnessed the police come in, and this just really strange guy look around. He didn't talk to anybody, nor did the police. They just came in, got the body, looked around, and kind of covered things up. There were some tracks that were in and around the area, and the police covered them up. They also took this person's tent away as well, and his belongings. So that night, the night prior to the police and this very strange man coming in, it was a night like any other night. It was, loud. People are very loud. There's very little rules, but there are, like I said, smaller communities within the community. Now, she is sitting with a few of her friends that she's made since being homeless, and that are pretty much in the similar circumstances she is, either loss of job or waiting on disability, I guess, is a big one. So they're just hanging out, sitting around in their their own little encampment within the encampment. It's like a little village within a big village. So it's a very interesting concept to think, if you think about it, that there are, small villages of these homeless people that look out for each other within a larger, so you've got 100, 200, 300 people, and out of that 300, maybe there's 30 small little communities, niches of people that know each other and take care of each other. But if you really think about it, that whole group, I hate saying this, but kind of protects themselves too, So they're all doing their own thing, and they're getting ready. She's getting ready to go to bed for the evening. She's talking to her couple of friends, and they hear a scream, this very loud scream, and they hear screams and yells and stuff all the time, but this was something much different. This was a scream of pain, a scream of kind of like a help, just complete despair and terror. They kind of pop up and look, and there is talk amongst all these little groups because everyone's looking to see where this scream came from. Now, what they hear after the scream ended abruptly is a very loud howl. And she said she described it as almost like a wolf, when a wolf is trying to communicate with its other kin or other, its small pack or whatever, to let them know to come. It was almost like a calling card. And it was super close, like within this encampment. And she immediately is freaked out because they are all thinking, oh my God, there is a wolf. A wolf probably just attacked somebody. Maybe it's rabid. We weren't really, they weren't really thinking of what this could be. And so all of a sudden, there's people running towards where Sandy and her friends are. And because she's kind of like on the outskirts of this community, she's like not in the middle of it, but kind of on the outer rim of it. But there's still another few tiers behind her. So she sees people running in absolute terror. She's got her caravan open, because she's getting ready for bed. So she's looking, and her friend must have saw what everyone was running from, because her very good friend grabbed her arm and pulled her into her own van and slammed the door and immediately locked the door. There are people, we're not talking hundreds of people, maybe 15, 20, 30 people, enough to notice though, running past the van. And they're all, these two women who are in their 60s, Sandy is in her 60s and her friend is as well, are looking at this commotion. And what they see, and there's all these little kind of campfires and propane cookers all around, so that it is light. Even though it's dark, it's still got some light pollution there. And they see this large bipedal Dogman, essentially. But people who are not in the field of cryptozoology don't know that term. If you are not researching, or you don't read or listen to experiences, or don't watch movies or shows or anything, you're not going to hear the term Dogman. You immediately think werewolf, though, don't you? So that's the immediate thought. And Sandy looks at her friend and says, "Holy shit, is that a werewolf?" And this is Wendy sharing Sandy's experience with me. I wish I had the opportunity to speak to Sandy, but maybe someday. So Wendy then says, Sandy's like, "Holy shit, that's a werewolf." And her friend is like, Where? I don't see it anymore, but I did see it, and it was huge. And she points, and there it is in the middle of this commotion. And they see it. There's people running by it, away from it. And she witnesses another person, or the initial person she doesn't know, a person just get flung. And then it jumps onto that person. So it grabbed the person and kind of flung this person and jumped on him. And this man was, he was an addict, and not a very nice person, but not a criminal. He was an addict. He was an alcoholic addict. He was very mean, very poor disposition, but he was not a criminal. He just tended to stick to himself and just be an asshole to people, I guess, So, because even Wendy said, I had dealings with this guy, and he was not an addict, or he was an addict. He was an alcoholic, but he wasn't a criminal. He was dealing with some mental issues. He wasn't there hiding from the law. He just had issues, and he was self-medicating with alcohol and drugs, but tended to stay to himself. Now, what they witness is this kind of, not even a skirmish, but they just see this Dogman essentially jump on this poor guy who was on the ground, and it pretty much very quickly subdues and kills him, and stands up and starts to drag the guy away from the encampment, like it's taking him. And a few of the, I guess, people in charge of, because like I said, they police themselves. It's a community within, it's communities within communities. So there's people that, I guess, an unofficial police. I hate saying it like that because it probably sounds stupid, but Wendy explained it to me so much better that, within these communities, there are people, these are good people. There are good people that just are really down on their luck, dealing with mental issues, dealing with whatnot. But they do believe in policing themselves, because it's not pure anarchy. If it, there wouldn't be people alive. There would be just very bad crime statistics, murder, the R word, everything else that you can think of that is not cool in society. So they police themselves. Apparently, 2 or 3 members of this kind of leadership role start to chase this Dogman, and they're hitting it with like golf clubs, and they have bats and such, and they're doing a pretty good job, I guess, of getting, driving this creature out of the encampment. But they're also trying to save this guy who is dead, but they don't know that, or maybe they do, and they're just trying to keep his body here. So apparently it gets one of the guys, it hurts another one of these security policing people really bad. Like, pretty much he probably died as well. Sandy isn't sure if he died. She's not seen him since the police and that weird guy showed up. But it runs off, and she witnesses these guys drag the one guy back, and the other guy that had gotten hurt during the skirmish is barely walking. He's really hurt bad. So they're helping him even move. She witnesses them setting him down in the smaller kind of group over here. And the solo guy, they put his body inside his tent. So they hear, as they're all watching this, they hear another howl. And it's that one Dogman now has kind of left the encampment, but it's close. And like it's in the area of this small encampment. Actually, the larger encampment, excuse me. What they hear, so time is going by really quick. Everything's just happening. It's complete chaos. They witness them put the body into the tent. Their friend is escorted to their area, the unofficial leader and police department of this group. They bring him to their area, which is all within where Sandy can see. Because in the middle, I guess she said the middle of this homeless encampment is where the worst of the worst is. There's just mass amounts of drugs. There is, issues within this, but that's where it mainly is. And on the outskirts of it is where the people that just kind of tend to themselves and don't fuck with anybody are. And that's where the unofficial leaders of this encampment are. So they witness him over there, and she's, she explains that time is just, it's going by very quickly, but it's almost feels like everything's happening so fast, but the way time is moving isn't, so the amount of shit that's going on isn't equivalent to the amount of minutes or hours that have gone by. It's still very dark out. Probably, all of this has transpired within less than an hour. And they heard that one howl, and they hear another howl, and they assume that it's this same Dogman, but they believe that it's kind of encircling or running around their encampment, watching to see if anyone is vulnerable. So tells her friend, sleep in here tonight. Sleep in here tonight with me. You're safe here. I don't want to lose you. We'll be okay. We'll keep the doors locked, and that way we're good. As they are calming down, they are now hearing this howl encircle the encampment here. But they are now hearing like one over here and one over here, very in rapid succession. So they know it's not one just running around real quick. It's because there'd be no way. It's a howl, a howl, a howl, a howl, just sporadically around this area. And that's it. They don't hear any more howls. They don't hear anything. And everything kind of quiets down about an hour, 2 hours later. And the last thing she remembers is she peeked out of her window and she saw some of the unofficial leader people looking in on the guy that was in his tent, the kind of lone wolf, no pun intended, guy that, had alcohol and drug addiction, but was medicating himself with that. They see him, check on him, and they watch them walk back to their little encampment. And she ends up falling asleep. She said, I don't know how I fell asleep, but I think it was the adrenaline rush just kind of wore off really quick. Being 60-something years old, you get a dump of adrenaline, you're going to crash at that age. She goes to bed, and her friend also goes to bed. They wake up in the morning, and they both kind of look at each other like, did last night really happen? Do you remember that? Yes, it really happened. They open their caravan door, and immediately they look at that tent where that poor guy had been placed. And sure enough, they can see his feet inside of his tent, but they can see that he's there. And she gets out. They have another kind of little smaller tent next to them. And then the woman who stayed in her van, her tent is off to the side of this tent. And the smaller tent, I guess, is where they cook and they do stuff. But they keep their supplies and anything of value in Sandy's van. So they get out and they start their little kind of Coleman stove to make coffee, instant coffee. And as they're getting ready for the morning, having their coffee, that's when the law enforcement show up. And there's a few homeless people that start running into the woods to get away because they don't, they probably had drugs on them or maybe warrants or whatever. But the police come in and they are seen talking to the unofficial leaders of this homeless community. They see that two guys go over and look at the tent where the guy had been. And they can see that they're also two checking on the other guy who had been hurt during the skirmish of all, where they were hitting it with golf clubs and bats and whatever they could get their hands on. But they realized that this poor guy also passed away. They wrapped him in his sleeping bag and, kind of like a makeshift body bag. They didn't do it for this guy, but they at least put him in his tent. So Sandy then tells Wendy, that's about all I know. I witnessed, that night was absolutely horrific. And there were 3 people that had been taken out of there in body bags. She doesn't know who the third was. She's assuming that it was the initial scream that they heard. And then this guy and the guy that was part of the unofficial law of the group. And there is an unofficial ruler or leader of this where I guess he deemed himself kind of like the unofficial mayor or whatnot. There are people that follow his lead and follow his rule and talk to him for, guidance or whatever. But the majority of them, they don't listen to him. Like, Sandy wouldn't recognize this guy as anything other than another person that's homeless, but then there's the people within his group that. So she says, I know that from talking to different people that we were trying to figure out what that thing was, that the guy Simon talked to him, and Wendy had dealt with him as well, because part of Wendy's job is, one, to help these people with services that can help them, and provide medical and provide clean methods of using certain drugs. So, and this Simon guy is in that kind of group, which I have no. Once again, I'm a recovering addict. Who am I to judge anybody? I'm just saying, there are people that don't, people that do. So she goes and she says to Sandy, all right, well, thank you for sharing that with me. Please stay safe, sleep in your van and keep your friend with her. And, she obviously agrees, but Wendy is trying to work on helping Sandy achieve help to get out of the predicament that she's in. But I mean, how you can't help every person. You could, but you can't. It's sad. There's not enough people that are willing to do what this woman Wendy does. She goes and speaks to Simon, and this is all within the last couple of months. And she tells Simon what Sandy had told her, and she said, apparently that there are other homeless encampments that are being plagued with these things. Do you think that, the local government, because like I said, the local government came in the summer of 2024 and really put the hammer down. Like, they were towing vehicles. They were doing anything and everything to get rid of the homeless. But where are they going to go? Except deeper into the woods. And, she said, I've heard that the government, whether it be federal, state, local, more or less it'd be the federal, are using these creatures to control the population of the homeless. Have you had any run-ins? Because Sandy, or she remained anonymous, but said that, you were someone to talk to because apparently you've had contact with these things. And he said, other than that one night, the only other contact that I have had is that we have witnessed them sitting on the outskirts of our encampment. And we've watched these eyes watch us. And they get close, and then someone will throw something. Someone will. They do have. There are firearms there. I mean, unfortunately, there are criminals, but there are people that had a life and probably didn't get rid of their firearm, but they've taken shots at these creatures to fend them off, I guess. And he says about a week or two after that attack happened, and I guess they've never came in after that. For some reason, they've never came in, and it was that one. It was a sole Dogman that came in and did that. But they will stay just beyond the outskirts of our encampment, and they will move periodically, and if someone's caught off guard, they may go missing. Now, what Simon had told Wendy is that he had two guys that he was really close with that worked to keep the law. And I'm not saying this like law, because it's not like the law we know on the outside. It's their law. You know, I don't live in that community, and the majority of us don't. But they have their own, system of checks and balances and things. During my addiction at one point, I was homeless. I'll never forget where I came from and what I had to go through before I got sober. Before I got sick, got sober, and started the channel. So I will never forget the things that I had to overcome, the things that I had done. But as he's, telling her this, there's a few people that he's close with that had, were going to go out of this encampment at night, maybe to go into town, which once again is 30 minutes outside of this, and whatnot, pick up supplies, maybe meet up and get a hookup or whatever, drugs, and never come back, and are never seen again. Like, just go out as they're walking out of the woods, and they're deep in, so it's going to take them a while to get out. And, day, night, as deep as they are, they're very vulnerable. He's found, body parts where he had called law enforcement. Hey, we found someone's boot with a part of leg attached. We found clothes bloody, like with claw marks on the backs of their jackets. And, we have actually called the police department and said, there's a leg, and no one will come and help them. But he said that the thing that he knows and witnessed during that next day after shit hit the fan that one night, that guy who Sandy had called, a weird looking bird, he was very interested in looking at all of the wounds that people had sustained. Like the guy who had fended off this Dogman to get it driven out of camp, hitting it with, golf clubs and bats. He had gotten torn up pretty bad. And this guy had opened the makeshift body bag, which was just his sleeping bag and a rope tied around it. That he had undone that and really looked at all of the marks on his body. He took pictures of it. This very strange guy. When he walked over to the other guy they had put in their tent, he studied him. It was just very weird. And he only talked to, Simon had noticed that this guy, this weird kind of government agent, maybe, I don't know, no one knows, man in black, that's my best guess, he only talked to one of the law enforcement officers, and it was the top guy. So Simon had witnessed this very strange man in black, or man in the government suit, looking at these bodies, and just, a police officer who didn't have any pull, wasn't the boss, he'd see him asking this guy a question, and this guy just ignored them. He wouldn't even talk to the subordinate people to him or their boss. He dealt only with, and he said that when they moved the body of the guy that was in his sleeping bag, when the guy in that suit went to open that, he had picked the sleeping bag just, like this, like it was no weight at all. And the guy that had fended off this Dogman that ended up losing his life wasn't a small guy. He wasn't like 100 pounds. He was close to 2 something, a very big guy. Apparently this guy was big, muscular, but fat as well, I guess. Picked it up just like it was nothing. Moved it so he could open it in a little better of a view and have more room around him so he could look, take pictures, take notes. He went over to the tent where the guy had been killed, Dogman had jumped on him. He grabbed him and pulled him out by his legs like it was no problem. He said this guy had the strength of maybe 2, 3, 4 men. It was unbelievable, because when Simon and his team of the homeless encampment law, when they had kind of dressed him in the sleeping bag, it took 2 to 3 guys to move him. And this one guy just went boop, like it was no problem. Fascinated with all the wounds and an immense amount of strength. So Wendy's next question to Simon was, do you think that the government released these creatures to control the population of this homeless encampment, or do you think it's something else? And he thought about it for a second, and he came up to the conclusion that it was definitely something else. This guy was not, he was working with the government or working with law enforcement, but he was on his own kind of mission. And so his answer essentially is that this guy works for the government, but he does not believe that the government used these creatures to lower the population. But then when Wendy started to share a little bit of things that Sandy had seen and a couple of her ideas, is when he said that's when he said, well, maybe then that makes more sense because of how this guy documented everything. The 3 people were wiped out within less than 30 minutes from the time the initial scream to watching the Dogman run in that first howl after was about 30 minutes. But the rest of the night just dragged on, and it was just commotion and people like sobbing and yelling. And he said, well, maybe it was a government kind of thing, but we didn't see any kind of vehicles dropping these things off. We didn't see them, act any other way, because if they were by the government, he said, I think they would just come in and wipe us out, because they definitely could. With the amount of eyes that he had seen that a couple days afterward, he said there was at least 10, maybe more. But there were 10 of those. If one could do that damage to those people in that short of time, what could 10 do? And so essentially, I don't know. I think quite possibly the government, if you really think about it, and I said this to Wendy, I said, well, it makes sense that quite possibly the government did use these things to control the population because they came in the summer and just cleared house. So what would it be to them to use these creatures essentially to drive you deeper into the woods, or to just wipe you all out? And it would be nothing for these creatures to do that. And what was this guy, some sort of man in black, some sort of hybrid human created somewhere, who knows? But being very extremely tall and extremely strong for his build only says, supernatural high strangeness to me. I really, how many encampments are going through this throughout our country? San Bernardino, Kent, Washington. And then to use the fact that a few of these people are addicted and do have mental illness, instead of saying, an animal attack, they're just saying ODs, taking your own life, whatever, was the cause of these people's passing. So essentially, yes, the government is using these things to control the population of the homeless encampments countrywide. And then after we let each other go, I got to thinking about something. And my thought was, holy shit. The Border Patrol agent from Texas mentioned 2 guys that resembled this one guy at this encampment. But he also said that Dogman, when it came in, it had a mission of taking out the illegals coming over through and wiping them out. I really believe that, just like the Border Patrol agent thinks that they did use that one creature to take out a small group of illegal immigrants coming in. And then to see the 2. And it just immediately, I was like, holy shit. They are using these things very quietly to achieve something, achieve either control, whatever. But why is the fact of, why are you going to release these creatures on people who don't deserve it? People that are down on their luck. People that are, it's a tragic thing to think about, If they're willing to, use that one Dogman in Texas to take out a family, many families, kids, adults, old people. And the only reason why it stopped was because they had taken a shot at it and hit it. And that one did that damage to that many illegals. That one did that much damage to the 3. What is a group of 10? What is a group of 20 going to do? Multiple deaths, multiple damage. And it's definitely unbelievable that our government is even capable of doing this. But you know what? Victor said it. Victor said it a while ago. So I believe that all of our presidents know about these things. All of our presidents know about the breeding program. Ironically enough, what the CIA's headquarters or training area in Virginia, where one of these breeding program bases is called the Farm. And to me, it's clear as day. The government is using these creatures to curb the population of the homeless, to wipe them out, essentially. So Wendy, I want to thank you for sharing this with me. She's gonna talk to a few other people that are homeless throughout the next couple of weeks. She's gonna keep an eye on Summer. She wants to see. That's her biggest concern, she said, was with the weather changing for the better. Will there be more attacks? And it only makes sense that there would be. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. It is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real, they are out there, and they are dangerous. These events have happened. Share this information with the people that you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.